usually the ladies have all the babies, but in the seahorse world, it's usually it is the male seahorse that actually delivers all the babies. So definitely I thought, well, maybe we should name a boy's name there, and we came up with Fred. So this is Fred the seahorse. You can name yours whatever you like. Play around with different colors if you like too, but definitely I like the aqua and the cobalt and little bits of purples and pinks. You know, just a lot of really fun soft colors to play with. And then also I wanted it to appear that the sun was coming through the surface of the water, coming through the water. So sometimes we get those sunbeams coming through underneath the water. So definitely also a little extra trick there for you guys to throw in a little bit of array there. So I hope you like them. Like I said, I drew them out. I made a pattern for you. And then that way it'll be a lot quicker for you. You guys don't have to worry about drawing them out. And definitely got some tricks for you guys that will help you get them painted and add those little extra texture looks and different colors. So I just did this on a 12 by 16 canvas. I did it on a wrapped one this time. So I did a little bit of the look around the edges there. This time I'm going to do it on a board canvas just to be different for two versions. And the first thing we got to do is definitely just get our background done first before we get our pattern on. And it's super easy, guys. I always love doing my backgrounds with sponges. And we're just going to be doing it with the aqua, maybe tiny little bit of white, and some cobalt. And just put a little bit of, you know, what you think for now, and then definitely we might use a little bit more later. You can always put out more fresh paint later. And that way it doesn't get all dry on you. Alright, so I just started off with a damp sponge. Alright, so you just want to dunk her in there. Right, get that water in there a little bit. Squeeze her out really good. And then dampen it off so that it's not too wet. Alright, so you have a little bit of moisture in your sponge before you start, and then we shouldn't really need any medium or anything like that, because I find that if you have enough moisture in your sponge, then your paint is going to go on a lot thicker, and you won't have to do so many coats, and you'll have a nice blending look. Alright, so we're going to start off at the top and then work our way down. So we're going to start off with this teal color, which I'm dominantly putting in my sponge. I definitely want to put quite a bit, like maybe 3/4 of it is going to be the aqua, and then just a tiny little bit of it is going to be some white. Alright, so just that little tiny bit to get you going. And then just pat down, soft little swirls. Right, we definitely want this to be fairly dark up here, so then when we put those little rays of shine coming through, then they will look nice on a little bit darker watercolor. Okay, so we do want to add that little tiny bit of white in there once in a while, just to soften it a little bit, and also it'll actually give you a little bit more of a dreamier, smokier look, and give you a little tiny bit more better coverage. So just take your time, and I go even around the edges of my boards just to make sure they're all done, because then you can always hang them with one of those little plastic hooks. And I showed you guys in my painting hacks. Hopefully you guys have all seen them all. Okay, so a little bit more white in there just to get a little bit softer, dreamy color, a little bit of smoky look, but definitely more aqua. Okay, so I'm just looking for areas that aren't maybe covering so good. Maybe I'll pop in a little bit more of that white in there just to give it more coverage. Okay, so we definitely want it to be a little bit lighter up in this one corner. but we can always add more white to it. Right, and then I'm coming slightly darker, with all aqua as I'm coming down. Right, slowly work it way down, working around your sides as you come down, especially if you're doing the wrapped ones, because then it'll start changing to that blue color around the sides and match the front. Right, so we don't need to be totally perfect, guys. We're going to be doing a lot more adding to it, right? So even if you have this darker edges of cobalt popping up, they're just going to look like maybe hills in the water, like further away. Just give it more look of background. So it's not a big deal if you don't blend it in 100%. Leave some darker areas if you like. And then we're going to be adding more to it too. Okay. So just about that halfway mark, right? So I've wet it a little bit with the aqua. Now I want to come in and grab a little bit of that cobalt. Okay, so you can add just that little bit of white still. And then I want to start merging this cobalt into the wet aqua, just about those 2-3 inches, just along the bottom half area. Alright, so I want to have that little bit more tealy blue color. There's still a little bit of aqua in my sponge, so it's going to be coming out too, coming in through with your cobalt. Right, and then just as you want it to blend a little bit more at the top, if you do go and pick up just that little bit more aqua, you can definitely come and merge a little bit of this line, a little bit, soften it out a bit. And again, I don't mind it to have that bit of a line look, because that might add to the landscape as well. Okay, so as we're moving down here, now I definitely want to start adding a lot more cobalt. And in the beginning, I didn't know what I was going to do at the bottom there. So in the pictures that you see in your PDF, there's like more like I used a coffee latte or something. I was thinking maybe I'll do like a sand look at the bottom. And then as I just kept playing and playing, it just became all like a seaweed everywhere. So definitely this time, I know this time I'm just going to go and put that cobalt all the way down to the bottom. And like I said, guys, don't worry too much about the coverage. If you're feeling like you got little areas that are not blended 100%, don't worry about it. We are going to be adding more with our brushes. Okay, so I just wanted to start introducing this little bit of a gradient. Alright, get that cobalt in there all the way down. You can see how it's getting just a little bit more darker cobalt all the way down. Right, soften that a little bit. No right or wrong, really, just as long as you've got a nice little bit of a gradient coming down, changing from aqua to cobalt. I didn't do all my ends there, so I gotta go and pick up just a little bit more aqua. Just so I can merge my side here a little bit. And it should be a little bit darker along the edges too. It's not a big deal, guys, like I said. As long as you have that nice clean aqua area here. Yep, I think it dripped on my canvas here a little bit. I'm gonna pat that in. Alright, so definitely as it's starting to dry, there's a time where you gotta stop. Otherwise it will start lifting up on you, and if you feel like you need to let it dry and go over it again, you can. But definitely, like I said, I'm going to show you guys where we're going to be adding more with the brush. Okay, so I'm not even worried about this one little area here that's not blended in very nicely. Looks a little bit, right? But I don't want any more blue. Right, so I'm just going to leave it. Or soften it with a little bit of white, maybe. And that's how fast that background is going to be done. Okay. So hopefully you guys have a blow dryer, and when you're done with the sponge, you pop it into some water. And take a few minutes. If you guys are doing it with the recording, then definitely you could just walk away and go grab yourself a drink or a snack and let it dry on its own. But if you want to keep going, and you can always just blow dry it a little bit. I'm just going to mute myself so that you guys don't hear it. Alrighty, that's dry already. Doesn't take too long, as long as your paint's not really gloopy or thick. Right, just thick enough to get your coverage and blend a little bit. Right, and not too close with your blow dryer, too hot, like a medium heat is all you need. Okay. And then once you have your background all good and dry, then we can get our pattern out. Right. So if you wanted to do this on a big 16 by 20 and add more background to it, or maybe put two of them, you know, you can always definitely add more to a bigger canvas. But I thought this would be a nice one to learn the effects, and then you guys can always expand on them. All right, so you don't want to have them too much in the middle. I thought a little bit over to the side, having his tail more centered. Right, having him a little bit over to the side, and then I can have a little bit more open space for where he's just kind of hovering and hanging around. Sometimes they latch themselves to weeds and hold themselves steady so they don't take off in currents, I guess. But then you also see them just kind of hovering there with their tail curled and just kind of swim along in different corals, right? And then definitely with their babies, you know, if you don't know a lot about seahorses, I'm not like a big pro on them, but definitely I have had aquariums before where I had guppies had babies, and they have a lot of weeds in the aquarium too, so then that way the little tiny babies have lots of places to hide in so that the bigger fish can't get at them or see them. So that's why I thought to add a lot of this little different weed stuff. Like these are like the long grassy ones like this are the type that they really like to hold on to with their tail, and then a lot of this other looser, I don't know, I didn't really try to copy anything in particular. I mean, maybe a little bit of the coral look there with the pink. But definitely I wanted to have something that was a lot more leafy and loose, so that, you know, to give you the illusion or feel that maybe if there was babies in there, right, they're hiding in there trying to stay protected. Right, so that was my kind of feel and thinking what I was thinking about when I was creating it, right? With my little bit of knowledge about seahorses. Alright, so we definitely need a little bit of masking tape. I got a piece here that's old, maybe that'll work. And figure out where you want to put them. I didn't put them up too high. This head was probably in the third area, so I gotta pick this up a little bit, lower it down a little bit more. You can put them wherever you really want. I got about 3 fingers, maybe over to the side here, behind his little tail. And just a little bit of tape just to hold it in place. And then we're going to use some graphite paper, carbon paper, and you always put the shiny side, the dark side down on your canvas so that I can make the marks for you. Now, definitely if you're on a canvas board, it's a lot easier to transfer on. If you're on one of those wrap canvases, sometimes it's a little bit bumpy, bouncy. So sometimes it's better to use a pen than a pencil, just because that ball of the pen definitely might help you a little bit more, give it more pressure. So yeah, we're gonna definitely use a variety of brushes here. If you have a 16, definitely a 3/4, maybe down to a size 10 or 8 if you feel like you need something a little bit smaller to work around in smaller areas. Definitely, we always like to have our brushes in really good condition with nice chisels to get some of those strokes done. But also, I always recommend to make sure that you always have an old brush around too. Okay, so definitely having some that lost the chisel. Okay, sometimes we use, we're definitely going to be using our scruffy brush for a few areas, but we have large ones, we have medium ones, we have small ones available, and sometimes I'll actually just use an old brush. Right, so depending on what I'm doing, I could do a little bit of base coating, and then I can stipple it a little bit easier and do like a pounce kind of look, right? So this is definitely what I did a little bit in his body, is as after I did some extra shading, is I just went through and pounced in a little bit of irregularness with my brush. Okay, so it gives you a little bit different look pouncing with an old brush as with your scruffy. So I was really trying to give a bunch of different areas, and same with this little foliage here, it's done with an old flat brush. Okay, so we're going to need some nice good ones, some bigger ones that are in good condition, as well as some old ones, and then our scruffy brushes. And so I think I used a smaller medium on this coral look, and yeah, so that's basically it for all the brushes that we're going to be using. Definitely we need a big 3/4 to get us started. All right. You guys ready with your patterns? Yeah, your back is dry? Okay, perfect. Alright, so we just definitely wanted to focus on the black lines. I did throw, the pink ones in there for you guys, just to kind of show you where I added all those little stripes after. And you really don't need them, but all we need is to focus on all of these black lines. Before you go all crazy and finish it all, make sure you always do a quick test. Make sure your carbon paper is actually working. I've done that before. I grabbed an old one or turned it upside down by accident. Alright, so there you go. You guys have the drawing at least of this guy's shape, and then the painting and adding the shading and colors is what's gonna be easy for you. Okay, and you can put this line down the middle here now, but if you've seen the step outs, I didn't add it till later, but you can definitely put it in there now. And then he's got a little bit different color on his back. So these lines just kind of separate those areas a little bit, and then they kind of disappear. Alright, so there is a trick here I give you guys to just outline his eye, and I'll show you how to shade around it so that way you don't lose the shape. Alright, go all the way around, and then you can go ahead and do the main shape. And they're very picky compared to real horses because they've got more hair. And these are more like fins. But some of them are really, really, really picky. Like if you Google seahorses, a lot of them don't come in these pink and purpley kind of colors. Full colors. More magical colors. Oh, I guess I put my hand on this ink for some reason. I made a mess of my pattern. Whatever marker I used. But yeah, some of them are really spiny and picky. They almost look like dragons more than horses. Okay, so once we got our general shape, make sure you always take a quick peek. Make sure you didn't forget any lines. And then we can pull our pattern off. Alright, so we don't have to worry about too much on his body. Right, so we just add a little bit more color, right? So I want to come in and pick up my 3/4. And now we're going to add a little bit of floating medium to our plate. So that shouldn't take you too long to get that pattern there. Alright. You guys can see okay. I'm still playing around with my lighting here. It's getting darker in the evening, so hopefully it's not too much glare there. Okay. So I also want to add a little tiny bit of violet pansy to our plate. I'm just going to dampen my brush in some water a little bit and wipe it out on a towel. Make sure it's not too wet, but at least a little bit of moisture is good. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is pick up a little bit of blue, a little bit of aqua, maybe a tiny little bit of white, and a little bit of floating medium. And whatever aqua I have. Okay. So the first thing we can do is definitely just keep going and adding a little bit of moisture as needed. Keep adding more paint and just go back and forth, just sideways for now. Right, little bit of aqua, a little bit of blue. Just to add a little bit of streakiness there, a little bit of movement in the water. Not too much of the aqua or the cobalt up here. Mostly just aqua. Alright, so that's where it's going to get a little bit more coverage. Right, and then if you go over your line a little tiny bit, then it's not going to hurt your pattern. Right. Little tiny bit of white, like I said, just to kind of give that little bit of a haze look over here. But not too much because we are going to start adding it a little bit more. Okay, a little bit more aqua there in my brush. Alright, so just to give it a little bit more coverage. And you need a little bit of movement. So definitely add a little bit of floating medium in there. Okay, so I'm still kind of in that tealy area, aqua area. Adding a little bit more cobalt now as I move down. Right, so we want it to kind of hide behind him, right? So you want to kind of brush over him a little bit. Alright, just so that you get those streaks starting to move. Oop, I got shadows there. Right, and I still want to pick up that aqua every once in a while in that cobalt area. Just to add some more movements here. And like I said, a lot of this is going to be hidden by all our foliage here. Right, adding a little bit more cobalt. Maybe maybe over just by his belly here a little bit. Okay, so we don't want to be working all the way down with some aqua. We want to change a little bit more with some of this purple, right? Add some of that blue, cobalt, and violet pansy together. Again, just going swooping it back and forth, adding some purple over on this side. And then the purple in the water here a little bit is also going to help contrast our seahorse. Okay, so sometimes you get too much paint, you can always use your fingers and wipe it out. Okay, and then we're going to also add a little bit more shading. Okay, so you see how I'm getting that little darker blue purple look. Right, underneath his tail here too, try to get that in there now. Right. And then definitely some of this cobalt and purple. I want this to be a little bit darker underneath where his tail is going to be. Okay, so just kind of planning a little bit of shading and different looks. Okay, so our canvas is pretty wet still. Right, working fairly quick. You can wipe off whatever colors you have here out of your brush. You don't have to clean it, just have to wipe it out on an old rag and pick up some of this floating medium and then come over and grab a little bit of white. Right, so we want some floating medium in there so the white is very, very translucent. Okay, just that little tiny bit of white, and then we can just put a little bit more of a lighter glow here in the top corner. Right, just so that it looks a little bit lighter here. And then now we have to change the direction of this stripe, right? So the sun is coming through. Gonna come through very, very light. We can always definitely go over this a couple times to intensify these little stripes, right? So you kind of want them to go through the body and right over to the other side. If they show, they show. If they don't, they don't. Right? So definitely gonna show through the top. I kind of went a little crazy with my white lines. I made maybe too many of them. Maybe just 6 of them. And you can see I have a dirty brush going on, so you should have a little bit of a color going on across with it as well. So it's not just all smoky white. Right? And if you get too much white, just gotta add more medium. Okay, so we're starting just to start, guys. Like I said, this is gonna dry, and we can definitely add a little bit more brighter white. Right, just very subtle. Right. Maybe like a little star kind of, flip-flopping movements. You really don't want it to be too neat there, kind of. Put one right off to soften the edge there. Does that look like the sun's coming through the water now already? And having those little bit of sideways stripes is definitely going to have those water look still through the sun. Okay, so a lot of this is going to be covered, so don't put too much white down here. Really all you see is at the top, right? So I wanted some to look like they were behind, and then we're going to add a little bit more, another wash on top of some of our weeds that we're going to put in the background, so that it'll help make them look even further away. Okay, so like I said, just an introduction to these rays to get a feel in the water. And then we can definitely now downsize to a smaller brush. Okay, so we're going to do a quick base coat on our Seahorse. And I'm pretty sure I used a 10 or a 12. Yeah, probably a 12. Okay, so right now it doesn't matter if you got a good brush or bad brush. We're not doing the pouncing yet, but definitely wanted to make sure that you guys do have some old ones as well. Dorothy's multitasking. She even got a brush in her mouth. Like I said, just the start of illusion. We don't make it too bright white right now. We're going to put another wash. It's really best to do it in kind of layers. And then that way you can have some of your weeds look a little bit more true color, and some will be more faded out. Okay, so we definitely don't have to worry about it being too dry right now. Like I said, if you want to be careful, if you're worried about putting your arm on it, then definitely blow dry it again, if you like. Okay, so what I did was I started off with using some of this aqua and white, right, multi-loading them. And then I'm using the aqua as a tool to draw out the shape, right? Keep our shading coming in a little bit darker, right behind underneath his neck here. And then we're going to add to it. So right now my white is actually very clean, right? So we don't care if it gets a little bit more dirty white in there. Well, once you start working it, it'll soften that white a little bit. And then we're also going to keep adding some more shading. Okay, so I just turn my brush around when I get to this side. Okay, so I have all the aqua. It's going to be all along his back. And then I kept going back and forth as I went to the front, so then that way I'm laying that aqua a little bit over the white. And then just as you get to the edge of that line, you can turn it around and put another little line of aqua on this side. Right, so hopefully that extra cobalt we put in there and that little bit of purple is going to help separate all these colors that are all so similar, right? Yes, we put a lot of aqua up here already. Okay, so I keep tip, blend it in a little bit. Doesn't have to be totally perfect. Just blend in those two colors. Using your aqua to draw a nice straight line and then bring it out. Okay, keep picking up more paint as you need it. If you feel like you don't want to have too much of your pattern gone there for that stripe, definitely just try to skimp that paint on a little bit lighter. Hopefully you'll still see some of those lines for you. And turn it around so that I can have my little bit darker color on the back too, so it makes him look more round, not just so flat one color. Get that line in with the aqua. And then slowly come in for your coverage. I try not to put too much medium in my brush when I want coverage. I just take my time, keep adding more paint. Okay, turn your brush around. Okay, keep adding a bit of white so that he stands out nice and strong against that blue. And then as he gets smaller and smaller on this tail, then I tend to turn my brush a little bit more sideways so that I can get a smaller stroke. And again, this is just a base coat right now. We'll be adding more to them. Dip, dip, add more paint, blend it in quick. And turn my brush sideways to get smaller. And then if you have a little accident, you can always grab another clean brush and erase it. But we're still going to probably add some more shading around here too that'll fix if your line isn't straight. Alright, and I'm coming around the bottom area, trying to get nice and clean lines. Very gentle when I want a tiny little stroke. I flatten out that brush real hard when I want it to be big strokes, but when I want it to be small, you know, just the size of that brush, I'm just gently manipulating the color on the tip of my chisel. Alright, so that we can kind of shade and then start adding some highlights all at once. And just keep moving your brush and manipulate it. Yes, go down to a 10 if you feel like you need it. But it's really good practice to try to manipulate these big brushes in smaller areas too. Okay, so again, we're going to be adding more. I add a little bit of citrus on them and more cobalt, more purple. Alright, see how you feel about your coverage here. Okay, so then again, once we get that belly part done, then we're going to do the same thing with cobalt now. Hi, Ann, you made it! Okay, and you don't have to change colors out of your brush. If you have lots of paint, you can always just wipe it out. Pick up a little bit of cobalt in where you have your aqua. Okay, about half and half again. some white. And then we're going to start base coating all around the edges again. Like that, it's pretty white right now, but by the time you go and come and do the other side, and going over it a couple times, it's going to start dirtying that white a little bit, softening it a bit. And then we are going to go over it again a little bit more. Okay, so what I like to do when I'm working with a pattern, especially with eyes, right? So I'm going to use this cobalt again as our drawing tool. Right, come all the way around his edges, under his eye. Make sure you're using a small enough brush that you can manipulate yourself around the shape of his face. Right, need a little bit more white in there, just so that the blue will spread as well. Right, a little bit of a hump there for his mouth, and then a bigger hump for his nose. Right. And then we're going to come around the top of his head and close it all up. Turn your brush around. Right, and then now we want to use that blue to highlight or shade the shape of his eye. Okay, so you don't lose his shape. And then you're also starting some shading that we're going to need anyways. Right, turn around the other side, work around his eye this way. I keep just very lightly manipulate that white. It gets too blue, I just go pick up more white. And just enough to base coat right now. Keep his eye just teal in the middle for now. Got too much white now. Gotta make sure I get some fresh cobalt. Go over that again. A little bit of a pressure, not much pressure at all, just enough to fit both sides. There we go. That's probably the trickiest part there, is just getting around his face down there. Just get some more, keep grabbing more fresh paint. I get a little easier here in this bigger area. Alright, more paint, more paint. Keep dipping, you dip, dip, dip. And now we have a little bit more room that we can go back and forth and soften that blue a little bit more. And I'm right-handed, so I'm just going to keep doing the side that is comfortable for me. And then turn your canvas to do the other side and work your way down if you feel it's easier for you. And go back and forth to smooth a little bit. I don't have a lot of paint, like you shouldn't have so much that's gloopy in there. It's just a nice smooth coat. Alright, so by now your white is probably really dirty over here, right? Like I'm not even being neat to get a clean gradient, really. Just enough to separate the colors. Right, as you keep practicing, you'll definitely have more control over your blending pile, keeping it a little bit more neat. Especially when we start getting into flowers and stuff like that. Keep practicing with my program. Or send me pictures of your work. And maybe we can meet on Zoom too, private if you need to. Okay, so very slowly this cobalt is going to get a little darker and disappear behind the tail. Okay, so that's basically it to get it started there. Alright, put some pressure, flatten it out. Especially where we have room, bigger areas, you can definitely get a little better coverage there. I almost forgot about his tail when I was drawing it, so that's why you don't see his tail in some of the areas in the step outs. I'm like, oh, I forgot his tail. Okay, and then what I did just to brighten things up so that the pink would look a lot brighter is I just went in and used mostly just all white. So then that way I can see and not lose the shape of his head. Okay, so just like I said, white for now. Up and up and up. I put one that went a little bit forward because they almost have like antennas. Okay, so just little peaks. And then this side is smooth. And then at the top of his head, then when they start to change direction, little the points, so you're actually moving that point into different directions, like your clock almost, right? So you got your 5 and 10 after, got rid of a 12, and then now we're coming over to 10, and then over to maybe 8:30, and slowly you're gonna push those little points to a different direction. Right, so now they're gonna come a little bit more down and around. Right, so you point it out in like a C curve. You're using the brush to get your shapes. Right, the chisel of the brush. Right, and I'm staying away from that smooth edge. Right, just enough pressure just to get coverage, get those shapes happening. Right. Then when I'm happy with the shapes, then I'll come around and do this side smooth. Okay, so just so that we can get a nice bright pink. Sometimes it's good to get that background back white again. Not too globby, guys. Make sure it's nice smooth paint. And then slowly smaller and smaller. And then it just kind of hides behind his back. Right, if you don't get a smooth 100% coverage, that's okay. Like I said, it's just enough weight to... Right, so I got some of my background still showing. By the time you get down to the bottom, work your way up. Sometimes you can go over and just skimp a little second coat just on the areas that might not be looking too good. Right, lay that brush flat to get better coverage where you can. Okay, so just enough so we can see where he is. And then I'll show you guys how I snuck in that pink a little bit easier for you too, especially for you guys that are just learning how to do one stroke. Right, sometimes it's easier to load one color. And then we're going to just add a little bit of base coat on his tail the same way. That's a little bit peaky, but maybe a little bit more rounded. Because we're looking at it on an angle behind his back, so you know, you don't have to be totally perfect. It's just the illusion of... Okay, so just that for now. And then once we get this all base coated and let this dry a little bit while we're doing the rest of our seaweed. So I did actually, his face had a little bit more aqua in there too. So we can add a little bit more, or I covered it too white actually compared to my first one. Right, so we can just see a little bit of white and aqua and cobalt to shade. Or we had a little bit more dirty brush going on from the belly, right? So definitely we can always pop in a little bit more of that teal or aqua. I keep calling it teal, but... Alright, so his face has got that nice aqua brighter color there. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And just little hints of aqua in there. I'm going to put that back in there on top of where the white is. But it's definitely got the cobalt more in the back here. And play with your colors. Let them merge together. Right. That's looking good so far. How you guys doing? I was trying to make him have a bigger belly too, like he was pregnant. Baby belly. I know I'm pretty quick at it there. I don't want to go too quick at it on you guys. And then I hope you're not worrying too much about the blue wash that you put through here, because again, I added more. I kept deepening it and adding it a little bit more as I kept working it. Right, so still a little wishy-washy color here, that's fine. All right, we're going to layer and glaze more on it. Alright, so there's even some areas, guys, that I wasn't too clean around the edges, but I wasn't worried too much about it because we're going to add a little bit more to it. We'll be able to clean that up, no problem. Okay, so when you guys are ready, you're going to get that big 3/4 brush back out again. Okay, so lots of floating medium in there and some cobalt. And you don't even have to side load it right now. All you have to do is just put some floating medium into that cobalt and get that brush really nice and covered. Right. And then we can start playing with some chisel strokes. Right, so just that little bit of grassy movements. Right, just very, very lightly. Some a little longer, some a little shorter. Right, some you don't have to go off to the whole edge on all of them. Right, I wanted these to kind of like really like disappeared. Right, and then every once in a while you can definitely put a little bit of a punch on them and make it look like a little bit more of like a weed leaf. Right, so these are just like really shadow styles here, really deep, way far beyond. Right, so you can definitely play around with a couple different grassy looks there. Right. And then slowly add a little bit more stronger cobalt as you move down. Right, so less floating medium in there so that you can have a couple that are going to be a little bit stronger blue. Oops, I picked up white somehow. We don't want that. Right, so I'm just going to wipe that out. Pick up some more floating medium. Right, just so that we have slowly getting some a little stronger and a little bit really translucent in the background. Okay, a little. Right, and then slowly into this really watery, translucent cobalt. Right, I want you guys to pick up and dip a little bit into your violet pansy, and you can definitely add another little layer of different colors. Right. I was trying to keep a little bit of an open space around his face, and I was trying to put most of those little far back grassy strokes, you know, more in the behind him. Right, layering a little bit through. Right, some a little bit thinner, some a little bit thicker. Right, lots of variety of bluey, purpley, grassy strokes. Have fun with it, guys. Okay, and then just right to blend this bottom here, this is where I started adding more color. Right, so like I said, oops, I got white in there again. That may not be a bad thing. But I was still trying to get translucent blues and purples. And I wanted the darker. Right, so we'll just wipe out that white. And just add a little bit of color as you need it. Playing around with the purples and the blues. And then this is where you're going to start getting a little bit more coverage now. as you work down. Right? Just to soften the bottom of where those grassy strokes are. You can see in my step outs how much darker I was bringing this in. And then if you want to outline a little bit more, grab more medium, a little bit of cobalt, to mix that cobalt and violet pansy together, and then put a little bit of pressure on the back part so you can just pick up a little bit of color on the very edge of your brush. And then if you want to line, clean up your line there a little bit more around his body, you can always go and add just a little bit of purpley blue, and then you're going to come out sideways from that line so it doesn't look like an obvious line around his body. Right, and that'll just add a little bit more depth and really pop out that aqua. Right, and then I'm not covering all of the area in here, maybe just adding a little bit of shadow underneath his tail, maybe around the top here a little bit. Right, maybe a little bit more shading behind his tail, underneath. So when you come around straight with that line, you have to bring your shading back out from that edge a little bit. Oops, I got a little bit on his tail, no big deal. Right, so we're going to bring that wet paint and then swoosh it out sideways. My term for this technique, swoosh. Right, so remember this is a lot of it gonna be hidden anyways, but I do want to start thinking about defining the outside edge, and then again we're gonna go and add a little bit more shading under there. You can always grab a little smaller brush to do that. Right, so definitely wanted to add these grassy strokes back here. Right, just a little bit here and there. Right. And then we definitely we're gonna be blow drying this maybe a couple times, guys, just so then that way we can get through it a little bit quicker. Right, and we definitely want to have this glaze dry. So it shouldn't take too long to dry. See, I'm not even worried about this bottom part here because I'm gonna just add lots of scruffiness to it. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to go slow for you guys there. Like I said, it's super easy there, not as complicated as you think. Hopefully you guys will just have fun with it. Alright, so it's just like invisible grasses way back there. And then once you're nice and dry again, we need a clean brush. That big 3/4 again. And some clean floating medium maybe. And come over and tip this time a little bit of white just on the edge. Lots of floating medium. It's a little bit dirty here, that's okay. Right, test it over here, see how white it is if you are afraid it's too light. Right. And then again, we can go and add that little brighter area here. I had to start off in my corner first. Right, and then now some swoop from that corner. Right, so I want to try and add just that little bit of a white glaze over some of these grass strokes so that it makes them look even more faded away. Right, so now the beams are actually sitting more on the blades of grass. Right? This little soft, ever so soft streakiness. And then again, some of it is just like a wash of white glaze, right? And if you feel like you've got too much white in there and you're not seeing enough, you could always go in and pick up just that little bit of aqua and go over it again with some aqua, right? And that'll help darken some areas again, like in between your stripes. Like just a wash of aqua or cobalt, right? Just enough to say you may want to separate some of these areas, but not enough where you're covering all your stroke work. Okay, so definitely try to keep them looking like they're little separate areas, right? Keep making spaces. And all coming out from the corner. Right, so I wanted to make sure I got this done too. So if we swoop on top of our work here, a little bit of our seahorse, not a big deal because we're going to be adding more to him as well. So what do you think, guys? Is your water starting to look like you got a sunshine ray through it? Oops, this one's a little bit crooked. And I can always just add a little bit more cobalt here. Just to glaze to darken if it's too white. Right. And again, keep an eye as you're drying it, and how you're liking, your water around the seahorse coverage. Right. Keep adding more little washes there if you want. Back up a little bit might help too, eh? You guys want to show me how you're doing? Got any questions? Oh yeah, there we go, Sue. Yeah, looking good. You can make your grass a little bit taller if you want, a little bit higher up. Some of those really skinny ones. Like a really translucent. And they almost disappear, and then when we're going to add a few more, then they'll actually look like they're closer. How do you guys feel? I don't want you feeling rushed. Nice and easy. Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to do, for especially for the paint club, right? We're definitely adding a lot of fun and easy ones in there, so this will be available as a download if people don't want to join the club, or they can get it after the event. They won't be able to sign up for a download before the event. Only for the clubs get it live. And then I'll put it on the downloadable after the event when I edit it. And then you guys that are part of my club, then you get all the extra little perks of joining me live and cheaper price. It might have made this guy a little bit chubbier this time. I'm sure they'll all look a little bit different. I have to Google. What do they eat? I have to talk to my Google. Hey Google, what do seahorses eat? Oh, small little crustaceans, such as little shrimp and copepods. Little tiny shrimps. How long do they live for? 1 year in the smallest species, to the average 3 to 5 years. That's not very long at all, is it? Ooh, always cool to Google and get a little bit more information about sometimes your subject. Is that way you can get the feel of it? Alrighty, you ready to pull some greens out? I'm gonna pull some citrus out and create some of our leaf look. And I did all of these with the big 3/4. I'm definitely going to add a little bit more stronger paint this time now. And so we did have some of these a little bit stronger. You can add a few more of those if you like. Right, just so that you have some that are really super far away and see-through, and then some might be a little bit. Try to stay lower. I went a little higher there. Okay, a little bit more grassy strokes, filler. Alright, so you got some stronger ones there too. And then for these grass strokes, I used citrus and white. Okay, multi-loaded. Alright, and I actually used the green on the top and the white at the bottom of the strokes. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is figure out from the bottom of his tail, right? This is about where the ground is kind of going, right? So we can put one in front of his tail if you like I did, or around his tail. Right, so I definitely have one a little bit shorter, just putting a nice little skin line up to show where you want it to go. Right, and this is get your main stem started. Right, then a little bit over to the side, and then give it a little bit of an S look. And I definitely went a little heavy there on my stroke work there, so you can definitely come in with a clean brush and thin down this line here a little bit if you end up having too much pressure. Right, and all your strokes are going to hide most of this anyways. Okay, then we can put another one maybe coming up this way. I wasn't really counting them, but I guess I did, I don't know, 6 7 of them. And then I wanted to have one curl right from behind his tail here, right around him, and then maybe above his head a little bit. And then this one again a little bit closer, but coming off a little different direction. Okay. And then you can put a little one here curling around his tail, like he wants to go and grab it. He hasn't grabbed it yet, but he's gonna go and latch on and hold on to somewhere and just have a nap. Okay, so yeah, I'm pretty sure I did it with the reverse. I wanted a nice bright green. Okay, so we can start off, again, right-handed. I like to work from left to right so that way I can stay out of my wet work, right? I know I have a couple southpaws with me in the group. Definitely always work your way out of your wet area. So you're going to start over on the right side where we're going to start on the left side. Okay, so you want very, very little pressure, guys. But you want a little bit of length, right? So not very strong punches. Hopefully you have a nice chisel on your brush. They can get nice skinny little chisels, right? And they're just going to overlap slightly over on top of this stem that you created. A little bit lower. Put a little dance in them. Right? A little bit angle. Trying to get some brightness in here with these light green. Okay, and then I ended up going down too far, and then I ended up covering some of it, but that's okay. Right. If they peek out around your coral, then that's fine too. Okay, and then again, trying to have different lengths. Ooh, make sure my brush is straight up and down. Okay, again, something's too big, you don't like it, you can always erase it. Alright, clean your brush, wipe it out on a towel, and just like you're cleaning a floor, you're just erasing what you don't like. Make sure you're comfortable. Right, and you slide that stroke right through. Right, you push down and then drag. Right. I'm going to make this one a little bit longer. You're pushing. My finger isn't moving, and I'm just dragging, lifting up the edge of my brush, and then the front corner is actually following through. Right? A little bit over on this side. Hopefully you guys have been practicing with my program. Right? Little daisy strokes. You can layer a little bit over on top of each other. But I am trying to keep this where it's not touching my seahorse, or it's just very, very, just touching, very touching. Right? And you can always erase if you feel like you got too close. And I'm a little bit too busy over here. You can always just leave it. Right? I put a couple more purple strokes on top of it too. Right. So those grassy strokes are behind. I wanted to add a few more of those. Right. So again, we'll start at the top. Trying to make some of them bigger and smaller too. So if you feel like you made some really big ones, maybe try to really lighten up on that touch so it's just a very, very skinny little leaf up here. It's going to go right on top of that main stem. Oh, I need to drag this one down just a little bit longer. Right, so when you're dragging, you want to be really, really like tickle. Right, so you have a nice pointy little area. If you want a thicker leaf, definitely put punch there, but then really lighten up to pull that through. Especially as you're getting a little bit lower. You can definitely make them a little bit bigger as you go. So you're just dragging it slightly on top of that main vein that you started here. It's not even connecting, so I gotta go a little bit longer so it connects right on top. You see that where it wasn't attached? I'm gonna make this one a little bit more curly. They all have a different character. Anything you don't like in the background, then definitely just stick a leaf on top of it, right? You see how I think I touched that leaf by accident and smushed them a little bit. That's the nice thing about doing something like this, is that you can definitely add another leaf or so you can work around things that you really like. Put one in over here. Keep adding weight. I don't know if you guys can see my plate here. Right. Bring this one down a little bit lower. And maybe we'll put another one right there. Yeah, that's looking good there. And maybe we'll put another one there. Remember, the more moisture you have in your brush, the more it's going to squish and make bigger for you. So if you're getting too much spreading out, maybe you have too much moisture in your brush, wipe it out. Because when we're cleaning our colors out, sometimes we don't wipe off enough. Alright, so I'm going to try and add some dimension around my little weed of his tail. So hopefully here. A little lighter, make that one a little smaller. Then I went in and grabbed a little bit more, again, just plain purple, maybe a little bit of cobalt in there. Right, and then I was trying to layer a few more grassy strokes on top of it. Right. Anything you don't like, again, this is a great way to kind of soften anything you don't like. Right. A little bit of this citrus is wet, so you might even up a little bit of that green coming through, right? So just a few little breaks there. I wanted to put in there. And then I ended up making some of them my little tree after too. I can add a little bit more, you'll see. If you want them a little brighter, you can always add just a little bit of magenta in that purple too. But then I wanted to make sure that it did look totally different than the other pink, right? How'd you guys make out with your seaweed? Good? Okay, hopefully quick. I'm not going to worry about my bottoms here because I know I'm going to be layering more. Right. Okay, so now by the time we do that, our seahorse is probably really good and dry. And if you've got a really good chisel, a good flat brush, then we're going to tweak in some shading on our seahorse. And sometimes I actually like a little bit bigger of a brush, even though you think it's really a small area, you're having a hard time. Definitely, as long as you can have the width in here, right? 10 or 12, whatever you feel like you can manipulate a little bit. I'm gonna pick some white up and some pink. And I actually want the pink at the bottom, or the white, doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to turn our canvas so it's easy for you. Alright, so what I like to do is use this pink right on the edge of the body. Right? And add that shading in there, but we want the edges to still be bright white. Okay, so you're slowly going to go on top of your base coating that you did. A little bit more white. If you're not got a nice color, like I said, you want that nice baby dirty white kind of color. But I want to have my edge nice and smooth here. So you see how I went right down behind his head. And now I'm going to come around and fix the peaks. Alright, so you can see how you're adding just that little bit of pink. And then keep turning your canvas until you feel comfortable. Okay, so I just want that pink in there. Okay, and go back and forth in the bigger areas to blend it out. Pick up a little bit of fresh white. Okay, got a little bit too much white in there. That's okay, you can just be pinky. Pinky, as long as he has a little bit of a gradient. A little bit of darkerness around the edges of his body. And then I have to put my white peak back in there on top of the leaf. See that? Slowly working my way down. Almost like adding a little bit of blush. I just want that little bit of bright, soft pink around the edges. And then when I'm ready to do the edge, I'll go and tip just the smallest amount of white. So I get a nice bright white around the edge. On top of my green again. Oops. Made a bit of a mess there. Let's get another brush. And you can do one color at a time if you really wanted to. Hopefully you guys are learning to be a little looser with your multi-loading and playing with it, right? If you're not getting a nice blend, you're just going to keep playing with that brush very lightly until you're getting the color you like. Okay, so take your time. It's all paint, no medium. Okay, and if you get dryness going on, just add more paint. Right, get that nice bright pink. And then we can always go back in here with one color and fix this dark edge of pink if we want to too. Okay. So I'm gonna just get that little bit of pink in there. And then while we have our pink out, this is where I started to add the coral. Right, so again, when you're playing with a variety of different colors, I like to try and focus these colors out, usually in like 3 areas. So I've used my greens in 2 areas. I'm going to put some green into the Seahorse now. So I'll have 3 areas have slight green tones. Same thing with the pink. I put a little pink into the Seahorse, so now I want like 2 more dominant areas with pink, so that I have a triangle effect of color. Right, so we're playing around with the learning color concepts as well. Right. Donna does a lot of things in triangles or 3s. So even something simple like this, you got to think about 3s. Right? We already got lots of blue and aqua going on. We don't have to worry about that. But definitely now we want to play around with some of the feature colors, which is the citrus and the pink. Okay, so if you have a medium stuffy, you can probably do it with that. I'm just going to find a clean spot that's dry on my plate here, so I can dip my scruffy brush, again multi-loading, and then you're going to work it in on your plate a little bit to test it and make sure that it's worked in really good. Right, a nice soft pink in the middle there, darker pink on the outside, almost white on the inside. Okay. Make sure you got a good amount of paint. And if you load up your scruffy brush and your little plate here, a lot of times all we need to do is come in and grab a little bit more paint from here. We don't always have to keep adding to from our piles, right? If you make yourself a nice little loading area right here, right? Hopefully not too globby, right? And then a lot of the corals, like you can definitely look at coral to try to copy more shape. I ended up hiding some of my, I really like the coral more on the right side, but I ended up hiding more of it again. All right. So I was trying to make like little arms off of it. Okay, so again, I can just start off with the top here, working our way down. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a long skinny arm and like a branch off of it. And then give it a little bit of space. Make sure you've got your pink in there and your light. Right? And I'm just playing around with the illusion of like almost like a tree look. Right? Using the white to kind of highlight in front of it, so it kind of hides it. Right, so you can do 1, 2, however you want, but you got 3 focal areas of pink, right? So I made a really big area here on the side here, a little bit more of a mound. All right. This one I made a little bit more skinnier. Right, just that base of the going up. Get the shape if you want. And then I started building off more arms off of it. Running out of white. So you see, if you don't have enough paint on the edges of the bristles, right, we want some fresh paint on the bristles on the edge. So when we're freckling, we have that fresh paint on the edge. They don't have to be really deep. Right, so if you don't have enough paint, then you tend to push too hard. Right, so you want to have that dark in there and then a little bit of freckly with the white. Right, so give them some arms. Right, not too light. Add more dark pink. And then I kind of just added more pink to give it some ground coverage. And then we'll add more different colors, a little bit of green. So when you're using a scruffy brush, you definitely don't want to put it in water until you're totally done. Okay, so we've got that pink. So I'm going to just take off a brush, old towel, and then just remove whatever you don't like. Okay, and then we're also going to be strategic a little bit too, that I'm going to go and play around with a little bit of purple now. Right, because the colors are very similar. So we definitely don't want to be playing with that green until the end. Okay, so we can definitely add a little bit more. Actually, I turned this around so I had the dark on the top. A little area of purple. I was just having fun with this. I wasn't even really looking at anything in particular. I was just kind of getting inspired and playing with it. All right, again, we can put a little bit more of a purple area on this side. Okay, and then I'm going to take my brush, or my towel again, and wipe out all of that paint. Okay, or paper towel. Then I came over and I grabbed a little bit of citrus. And actually I used a little bit of cobalt in that citrus as well. Okay, so we want to add a little bit of citrus here and cobalt. That'll start giving you a little bit more darker green look. And we don't want it to be too white. We want that citrus and just a little bit of a darker base. I'm running out of citrus here, so I definitely should add a little bit more. Not too much more. Right, so the white will be lightened up a little bit with the citrus. The cobalt will help darken the citrus. Okay, so that way we can have a little bit different color than our grassy seaweed look. Right. Or you can use a little bit of sap if you want to. Right, you see the cobalt will definitely darken it and make it look more bluey kind of green. Alright, and blend that off. And then I played around with more blues and aquas and different colors of foliage. But I didn't want to put too much down right now because my arm is going to be in it. Okay, so definitely I did start playing around with some of the stuff, and then I let it dry a little bit or blow dry it a little bit, and then come back to it and then finish the bottom at the very end. Okay, we can definitely play around with that a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to definitely work on our side loading and shading a little bit more too in this project. Okay. Playing around with that floating medium and a tiny little bit of violet pansy now. Okay, so hopefully you guys found a flat spot on your plate where you can side load. Right, you can side load right into your puddle if you want. Keep adding more floating medium to the back end so that you can get a nice thin line. See where I can test this for you to show you. Right, so when you're painting, you're actually painting a line. Right, an outline, and it's going to have a nice soft edge to it so it won't look harsh as if you took a liner to it. Right, so it's going to give you a nice shading look. Alright, so the first thing I did was I went up, tried not to get my arm in that pouncing, is come up and added another little shade area on top of the cobalt. And hopefully what you're seeing is a blend of those two colors now. Right, you can still see a bit of that cobalt coming through, but the violet pansy is going to help darken that edge a little bit more. You're still going to leave that little bit of light aqua look with the white in the middle. Right, and you're going to come down all the way around the bottom, work around your edges here a little bit. All around. I know we did it with the blue, but definitely just very light. And then you can even miss areas with that purple too, right? So you're leaving a little bit more of that cobalt in places. All right. Really the look of layering these colors together. Right, just very lightly adding that little extra shading. Oops, I ended up putting green in there. Okay. So you can see how you have all that edges done now. And then now at the top of his forehead, I'm going to just touch down here and there and doing like a little back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And actually my brush right now is too good. Okay, so we want to go and grab an older brush. It's a floating medium in there. So you still want to have pretty good strong paint on the tip, but just diluted on this side here, on the back end, right? And then we're just going to just pounce down, going down to the side, over to the side, work your way down, adding just that little extra freckle look to it, right? And then that way we can still see that aqua, right? Going right over to the edges a little bit, right in front a little bit, and having that old brush is really key. All right, giving them that little scaly look, right? And then I slowly worked my way down. All the way down to the back. Right, just gentle little pouncies. Right, just a little spotty look. Right, yes, I still want to see that blue and cobalt and aqua tints all around there. Just a little bit spiny, purpley look. Okay. And then still playing around with the side loading here. And we're going to turn this around now. And you're going to add that little bit of purple shade all the way around the edge now. So hopefully it's just looking like a little darker magenta. Right, you still got that pinky look. We're going to do reverse shading on the other side of his mane. Okay. And then this is where I used my chisel. Right, you're following that along, right? And then you're pulling out a stripe. Let's do it this way. Right, so you're following it along, and then you pull out a stripe to the points. Following it along, pull it straight. So definitely you want to have nice chisels on your brush at times. But you also don't want too much paint. Right, a little bit of more floating medium. And then don't be afraid to kind of erase what you don't like. If you went further onto your water, just wipe it out. Sliding it along, and then just pulling it out where I want it to poke. Right? So put a little bit more, slide it out like a stripe. And this is a little bit of an old brush. Like I said, play with your brushes, see where you're getting a nicer effect. There's times that you might want to use a better chisel. Right, see how skinny my line is now with that better chisel? While it's still wet, I'm trying to just make this a little neater. And that old brush you can use for erasing. Okay, so if you go off the edge a little bit. I have too much purple on my brush. I'll actually wipe off the edge of the back. Okay, so again, this has got to start changing direction. I just put the line down and then pick up your brush and come on the other side of it. Alright, so you get some really stripy lines here. Okay. And because you could always go over here again if you feel like it's not enough depth. Let it dry. Alright, you can always go over it and add a little bit more. See how you feel. Okay. And then at this point is where I went and grabbed a little bit of clean white. And just added the white back into his eye. A little bit of an auburn, almond, a little bit of an almond shape. Right, just to get that going and let that dry a little bit. And number 1 or 2 brush, whatever you got. Alright. How you guys making out? Am I starting to move too fast for you now? Not doing too bad for time. You good? Like I said, a lot of little tiny steps, but all very easy, I hope. Okay, so again, the hardest part is just finding a clean spot on your plate to do some side loading. Okay, so I want to change to cobalt and add a little bit of purple to the cobalt. Okay, and now we're going to do the reverse shading on his belly here. Alright, so you get some softer tones on this edge here. Just a little smaller, darker. Again, definitely you want it to be a little bit more bluey on this side, right? So it looks a little different from the back end. Right, so you're mixing purple just a little bit to darken. And add a little bit deeper shade. And this is where I played around too, adding just a little bit of darker color right at the bottom of his curl. And then I might have put a little tiny bit there along the bottom here. Just so that I was playing around with different colors, and not all the way around, guys. Just at the bottom, we want the darker. Right, maybe just in between a little bit here. Right, don't forget your medium. Going back and forth after when you're done, just to smooth out that gradient. So that you bring it out slowly, a little deeper out. And then to make the outline of his body here on this side, you definitely got to put just that subtle shading line around here too. And then it kind of disappears. It's very subtle. I'm just adding where you want it to tuck and hide, and especially around a leaf there. This is where I'm just adding just a little bit more shading. Just in there. Okay. And we got lots of floating medium in our brush. We can tip just that little bit of citrus with some floating medium now. I love doing glazes. Right, as much as we like to do our one stroke, techniques, all like one stroke kind of thing, definitely layering and glazing sometimes has its benefits, right? So if you see, I just grabbed that little bit of washy citrusy, and I'm just floating that now over some of that aqua. Right, so you still get that nice glow, neon kind of color feel. Then I played around adding little bits of green tones into the tail, but only in certain areas. Right, I still wanted areas where that aqua kind of showed through, and I definitely wanted to still have it look a different color than the seaweed, right? So just glazing that little bit of brighter green here and there, right? Just a nice smoothness. Right, and I did try to make it a little bit stronger green on the outside of the body. And then slowly turning into more aqua, right, which is already there. Oops, duet. I see it. Hopefully nice tones underneath it still. Adding a little bit of white to my brush. I'm not even doing proper loading, guys. I'm just as much as you're just getting two colors on your brush. Alright, so again, I want to add a little bit of freckly look. I'm just grabbing a little bit of white and some citrus. Give it some different texture here. A little bit wider here. And add a little bit of cobalt into that too if you want. Just around the edges. I'm trying to make it look scaly, right? So it's just touching it down, almost like your scruffy brush. Adding a little bit of teal. Adding a little bit of cobalt. Right, as I'm going into the middle here, picking up a little bit more cobalt to scrunch with. Right, layering it slowly behind. Right, that's why I said you want to use an old brush for this. And then slowly, I'm not even cleaning my brush, guys. I'm just keep grabbing more color. Right, so now I want to add a little bit more shading underneath. I'm going to add a little bit more freckly look, right? Go right around the edge. And then pull it out. Adding just a very subtle kind of scaly look. Add a little bit of purple to it too. Alright, so then we get different tones. And the purple is really what's going to darken the blue, right? Just very subtle. Don't have to have 100% coverage, guys. It's just freckling kind of. Hopefully you guys can see how I'm just kind of lifting my brush and trying not to overwork any area. You can always bring out a little bit more blue. Right, from purple to blue to aqua to green. Right, hopefully you're seeing a little bit of all those little colors going on. Right, wherever you had some shading going on, just try to kind of soften it with some freckles. You see all those spotty looks now? And a little bit of texture wherever you think you need it. Right. Too purpley, add a little bit of blue. Really playing with those colors. Make them magical looking. Right, I just kept playing with them. Okay, so we want this to kind of dry a little bit before we add those extra stripes. Alright, so we just play with this until you're happy with that. Wherever you think you need drying time, you know, you can go play with your seahorse, come back, do some seaweed, and then go back and finish it. Right, let it dry a little bit if you have to. Add a little bit more shading around the outside if you feel like that'll help clean them up a little bit. But definitely if you want the blue to look darker, add just that little bit of violet pansy. Yeah, I got my good brush with me here again. Because we definitely want these to be dry here too, so if you wanted to add another element of sun rays, you definitely want to add them on dry, right? You want to make sure everything is good and dry. All your pounced areas are dry. A nice clean brush with just a little bit of white and floating medium. You can definitely keep adding those little bit of you know, it looks like now these are getting hit by those rays, right? Definitely lots of floating medium. Right, see how you feel, how you like in yours. Right, hopefully this whole back top area is washed out. Lots of layers of these rays. Right, so now you can see where they should come through a little bit more. Maybe there's a little bit on top of your seaweed or coral. That looks better. Right, just to soften. Keep adding a little bit at a time, so if you're afraid you're going to put too much, then the safest way is definitely just a little bit at a time. Okay. And then I want to go into that old brush again, right? You see it's separating in the middle, it's curling off on the edges. Those are perfect. Don't get rid of them. Alright, so we're definitely going to multi-load and pick up some purple now. Oh, I'm picking up teal and blue and all kinds of beautiful colors. Go with it, guys. Okay. So if you definitely want to add a little bit more of stem work again to follow, you can definitely add a little bit more with a liner brush or just any good chisel, right? If you want to add a couple little branches, again, just to kind of guide you where you want them. Okay, and then you're going to start off at the top of your branches, and it's just a push, 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 push. Right? Start off with 1, then 2, then 3, come over and then add another little branch. Give it some space. Right? Don't have them all too close to each other. Right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right? So you're definitely breaking them up. And it's just like a splot. Right? You want some of that fuzziness to be at the edge. Right? So you want that, maybe not pouncing enough. You're just kind of pushing on it really like a punch. Right. Adding paint, keep adding white. Make them all random. Alright. Some might be a little smaller and simpler than others. Punch, punch, punch. Almost like a daisy stroke, but a little bit rougher on the edges. All right, just very little bit of pressure. So they're small. Almost looks like baby's breath in a way if you've ever played with doing some baby's breath. I was trying to make it a little bit layered look, right? But not enough where you're hiding all your cool stuff. Right? Still peeking bits of that through. And then you can always try and see how you like, using one of these brushes. Use a little bit more blue in it. Right? And use it as a scruffy brush. You might get a little different look. With it, right? Some softer, sandier areas. More blue. Kind of tie in some of the colors together, right? A little bit of purpley blue over here. A little bit of more green if you want. Right, so like I said, these old brushes make great scruffy brushes too. Right, wipe them out. Play with different colors. I used to think a little bit more teal too somewhere. I'm running out of teal. So basically whatever's left on your plate. Try to break up those areas. Right, adding a little bit more, whatever dirty brush you have. Keep adding more colors. Maybe we want a little bit more greeny blue over here. And grab a little bit of citrus and some cobalt together. I'd have a hard time making the same one twice, I really do. I look away and then I just keep playing and having fun. I can just do some scruffy here and here. And then when it's all dry, you can always still add another layer of more seaweed, right? The grassy strokes are going to keep building in front of the in the picture, right? So you definitely can still put in a little bit more. Add a little bit more of that purple and blue together. And just, like I said, you're adding the illusion of it being in front of you now, right? I don't think I'd added too much of that before, but just another idea of adding, that next layer of weeds coming through. Right. Just having fun with it. Right. And what else am I missing? Oh yes, we have to put, we forgot his tail. That's what I think I did last time too. I'm like, oh, I covered his tail. Right, so we gotta get some white in there. And put that back out there. And then what I did with that one is I used a little bit of purple on the edge. of his body here. And just use the white again like I did up here. Just wiggle, wiggle, push it out, wiggle, wiggle, push it in. Alright, adding a little bit more there. I'm gonna let that dry, and I definitely want to add a little bit more shading behind his back. I'm gonna use the cobalt. These are the purple and the cobalt together, right? Very small little amount. Add a little bit of shading behind his back. You can always bring a little bit more of that blue look down a little bit if you want, bluey purple. And again, if you feel like you have not enough dimension, all of your little scruffy areas here are dry, you can always go and add in another glaze of color, right? If you feel like it's not deep enough for you. And not enough where you're going to hide all your texture, just enough to glaze over it. Right, putting some blue into that teal. It really helps it make it look a lot more tropical. Playing with the teals and citrus and the blue cobalts. And then going on to the other spectrum of blue and purple, right? We got the bluey greens on this side, and then we got the bluey purples on this side. And then they all tie into each other. Okay, so I didn't use black to darken things. I definitely tried to keep playing around with softer tones. It may look a little bit dark. Might have to get another plate here. It may look a little bit dark, but I really just used dark brown. And then what I did to soften it was add blue or purple to it. And that's what made it look darker, a different color brown. Okay, so you see how I'm getting just that line. And add some flowing medium. And again, anywhere you want it to look just that little bit darker, you can always add just that little bit more shading with that brown. And then what I did do is I went around his eye a little bit more with that darker color. Just very subtle. Nice shaded look. And keep adding floating medium. A little bit of blue, a little bit of purple, whatever you like. Okay, if you're not sure about this, right, you can always use chalk or a pencil. Okay, so it should definitely come up right underneath his neck, and then slowly a little bit wider, and then a little bit more narrower until it disappears. So again, if you feel like you need to pencil something in just so you have something to follow. Okay. So the first thing I did was draw that line coming right up underneath the corner of his neck. Right, nice and skinny. All the way down until it disappears down low. Okay, so that's basically your first one. Then you're going to come around the other side of that line to soften both sides. Right, you need to do it on both sides. And we get that line down the middle. Right, really push on the back end of your brush to shove the color up. Right, so that way you can really get that line and just a shade behind it. Right, a little bit more liquid if you feel like you got more color, but try not to put too much liquid because sometimes it just gets too watery. Alright, so then it's just like, it's slowly changing directions. The first one's coming around underneath his neck, almost like a soft line, like almost straight. Oops, gotta make sure this is dry first. Oops, sorry. I forgot about that. We need to dry this first. Add a little bit more shading. Again, anywhere that you want to make these lines a little bit darker, you can always do that with these too. Right, while it's there. Add a little bit more darker lines if you feel. Trying to be patient and waiting for that stripe to dry. Okay, but definitely you can use this color to intensify any area. Right. I said it's just a lot softer than using black. Right. While it's wet, keep playing with it, because you can almost use the floating medium as an eraser. Right? You see how I just went over that to clean it up? And I'm going to blow dry this a little bit. Feel some blue. Okay, so once it's dry, then we should be able to do the sideways stripes. Looking too brown, just add just that little bit more blue or purple. Alright, so it's going straight across it now. And straight across it. a little tiny bit of a soft circle to it. So you're kind of straight here, and then it goes up on this side. A little bit bigger space. Slowly progressing across here. Then they're slowly starting to straighten out. So we're about here. I'm going to be a little bit more straighter. And now it's starting to look more brown. Add a little bit more blue. And you're slowly going to have that small space here and then a little bit wider. Right? So you see how the narrow here, a little bit wider here. Right, that's going to help curl it around. Coming down a little lower, a little bit straight, and then curl. And so you could always cut your pattern and place it back on over if you feel like you need to find my areas. I've done that before where you actually cut your pattern. Okay, take scissors and cut all the way around it so that you can lay it on and find your spot again. And then you'll be able to use my lines if you need them. Okay, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Right. Just adding those extra little stripes. And then eventually you're gonna lose that vertical stripe. Oops, it should be a little bit narrow here, a little bit wider there. A little bit on an angle. And then as you're getting down the tail, you're trying to straighten out a little bit. And they can be more subtle too. You can definitely, don't make these lines too strong. As they just disappear. And pretty much just the width of my brush, guys. And slowly going up in a circle. And then maybe a couple faux ones again. You're just getting more and more translucent as you're coming around. All right, and then you just stop. All right. Make sure it's good and dry before you go cross-checking. Alright, see how I just went to try to do this down and it's still wet and wrecked my stripes. Okay, so I'm just gonna let this dry a little bit. Tweak, you know, other places, guys, right? Go in with your little extra shading. And like I said, anywhere you feel like you just need that little bit more deeper color, you can always just float this in, you know, just in spots. And this is pretty dry over on this side, so what I tried to do too is add this extra shading, but I want to make it bumpy now. So hopefully I'm not going too fast for the finishing touches, guys. Hopefully with the recording, you can stop and start me too. I want to make sure I got a nice color on the edge. It's just not giving it to me, so that's why I keep grabbing more paint to get the color I want. So now we want it to look a little bit more spooky. So wherever these side ones are, you're going out towards it and then in a little bit to give it a little tiny bit of a step. Right? Go beyond your pattern line and then back in. Make sure this is all dry so that way you're not wrecking your sideways stuff. Alright, and then we have our little bit more picky look to them, and then it just goes smooth. Like, you don't have to worry too much, because as your color starts to get too dark down here, it's going to be harder to see it. So hopefully you've got some nice light aqua areas around the face and the top part of his body, which is going to help give it that glow. Okay. And then also you can add a little bit of shading on the water side too. Alright, you don't have to always add shading on him, you can put it behind him a bit more. Right. And then again, if you feel like you need to add a little bit more freckly look, you can always go in, tap a little bit more color, right? A little bit more brighter in between on the squares, or a little bit more white if you feel like you need it, right? I touched just a little bit more greeny white on this side, and then I tried to touch a little bit more tealy white on this side. Right, so if you feel like you need just a little bit of glow, right, just a little brighter color, a little bit of white in there, a little bit of freckles, just kind of detailing certain areas. See how you feel about yours. Right, and then like I said, I used more green and white on this side. And a lot of times I love using just my fingers and let it freckle. Oops. Too much white. Rinse it off. I love doing the eyes last. I know you're like, when are you going to do the eyes? I always do the eyes last. I always seem to, it brings it to life. You know, I just do those eyes last. Right. Whatever you feel more comfortable with. I sometimes do get a nicer, skinnier point off my number 2 liner brush compared to my number 1. But wherever you can get a really nice thin stroke from. And then this is probably the only place I put black eyes was the eyes. Right? You can play around and use your bluey black that you made with your brown if you want. Where did my black go? Black or licorice. Let me get you guys a little closer for these eyes, because I know some of you, it's not your favorite thing to do. Okay, so one of the tricks I like to do with eyes is use this white as it's already there for you, right? And sometimes I'll still go in and add a couple white spots on there after. But generally, a lot of times I like to use what's there already. So when you're starting to make your circle for his eye, remember that this part here is more straight. It's not a perfect circle. Right, so you definitely want to keep the whites of his eyes right on the outside. And then if you're very careful at just kind of dabbing, leaving those white areas. You see how the highlights are already there? Especially when you have a big eye. Because the smaller your eye, you definitely sometimes, it'll be a little bit trickier. And again, if you want to line it just a little tiny little bit. Right, and I was giving it almost the look of little eyelashes, a little bit heavier here. Just kind of touching it. And then, again, just being very light-handed with your little liner brush. Right, just trying to give it a little bit of sparkly, kind of flecky look. Nothing too perfect. My eyes are a little bit big. You can always take off some of that white. Right. And so your circle is, like I said, it's not a perfect circle, right? When you have a perfect circle, right? Trying to show you on here. Your eye might be that perfect circle, but your eyelid cuts it off, right? So you're only seeing the circle of your eye right here and right here. Does that make sense? So your lid, I know this is not perfect, but I just want you guys to see the top and the bottom of that circle is straight, right? So you don't want it to, you don't want to see that whole ball and then your eye lined around it. That's what I'm trying to say about eyes. You definitely want to have it a little bit flatter, right? So your lid is going through the circle. And see how you can only see the rounds on here, but the tops are kind of flat. Okay, so and again, if you feel like you didn't have enough shading under his eye, definitely you can always go in with a softer color. Right, a little bit more blue. Right, and then just soften it with some blue around the outside. Right, don't want it to be too dark. Or a little bit of purple in there. Right, I love glazing the blues and purples together. Oh yes, and then there's a little tiny nose in there too. So that's just like a little U stroke that I did right in here, just to say that I put that little bit of a nose in there. Right, so I'm showing you a little bit bigger there. And then again, you can put a little bit of illusion of a line there if you want. But don't make this too big. Just a soft little nose. And sometimes I don't even want the whites of his eyes too white. Dirty it a little bit. So what do you think, guys? Hopefully it wasn't too hard for you. Something fun. Whatever you like for colors. I'm trying to find some purple. Do we have any purple left? It was just too blue. Pink! And blue definitely makes purple. Just adding a few more weed looks. And just a couple there that have a little bit of a fatter leaf or whatever you want, right? It's your underwater landscape here, guys. I'm just adding a little bit more shading to the very bottom. Soften this maybe a little bit with some floating medium. Now I'm doing more than I didn't do in the first one. I'm just kind of playing with it, right? Afterthoughts. Alright, and then you can use your number 2 strip liner to sign away. I just use some white, I guess, and dirty brush. Always softer version. And then sign your name. Okay, see how you feel about your raise, right? Step back, take a picture. If you feel like you need a little bit more brighter color, you can hit it just a little bit more. Right, you want it to be nice and bright off the edge, and then just disappear. And then sometimes, like we do our double shading, you can definitely come and turn your canvas around on both sides so that you're getting that little bit of white on both sides. Maybe you're getting not enough shading coming out on both sides. And you can definitely turn your canvas around. And definitely a little bit more whiter at the top. And just try not to take your blue spots away, right? You really want to see these blue spots in between. Right. Oh, you like that, Anne? So pretty. Gives off the feeling of peace to me. Nice, thank you. I hope you get to painting soon. What do you think, Sue? Hopefully, not so hard.
I love the colors of this one.
It's so dreamy, eh? Like mystical, magical kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and I like how the rays come down.
Yeah, I was really having fun with those. As I said, I'll put it, and then I'm like, no, I need more. So I think part of the look was just because I kept doing a little bit at a time, putting more, adding more. It got more layers of it.
Yeah, yeah, very pretty.
Like that. Let's see.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time doing that. Oh, your second one turned out brighter.
Yeah, a little bit different. Yeah. Maybe I had a little bit more aqua down lower, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks good. Even
Yeah.
more purple though in the, down at the little bushes.
Yeah, I definitely did the bottom part different. There goes my camera.
But we got the idea.
Yeah, you can definitely play around with your landscape bottom area, you know, just with a variety of different colors. And then, like I said, my afterthought was to try and just grab more grassy strokes from the bottom. You don't have to, yeah, you don't have to do that if you don't want to.
Yeah. All right, Adela, thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. It was so much fun to be able to paint with you guys again.